Have you ever seen someone take a belt to a puppy and do this? Sadly, that happens every single day. But I'm not talking about that happening to puppies. I'm talking about that happening to children. It happened to me. If we saw people treat animals the way some people treat children, society would cry out. We'd be outraged. See, I survived growing up in an abusive home. I was forced to pull my pants and underwear down, bend over a bed while I was hit repeatedly in anger and rage. Sometimes before the belt hit me, I would hear the snap of it just to increase the intimidation before it struck my flesh. I was beat with belts. At one time, I was also beat with a bullwhip. I remember one time I was in third grade, and I got a 48 out of 100 on a math assignment, and I sat at my desk bawling my eyes out, terrified, too afraid to bring that assignment home for fear of what would happen to me. As all the students left, I sat there and I begged my teacher not to make me bring this home for fear of the consequence. Thankfully, she agreed, but sadly, she never told anyone. I'm not alone. This happens to millions of children who turn into adults and carry the pain and the trauma with us. You see, being struck as a child creates a lot of pain and trauma. Not just physical pain, but emotional pain as well, and confusion. I wasn't beat, I was spanked. It wasn't abuse, it was discipline. And I was told it was all done in love. And that confusion and that pain and the fear that I carried with me every single day led me to, at the age of 20, attempting to take my own life. And I am so thankful I didn't die that night. And instead, it took me on a journey to understand why. Why do people hurt people? I have learned this, that hurt people hurt people. Healthy people, however, heal people. And I am on a mission to see hurting people become healed today. See, the sad truth is, in the United States, every 10 seconds, a case of child abuse is reported. Just since I started talking, more than 10 cases of child abuse have been reported. In 2014, state agencies estimate 702,000 victims of child maltreatment. To put that number into context, that would fill 10 modern football stadiums today. There's something happening in our society, and the results are perpetuating pain. One of the sayings I heard repeatedly growing up is, intimidation is the purest form of discipline. But I have learned that love is the purest form of discipline. And it has led me to discover 3 vulnerable truths to not only break the cycle of child abuse, but completely heal from the fear, trauma, and absence of self. You see, it wasn't until I looked into the eyes of my own children, and then I stared at my own hands, that I realized in my hands, I hold the power to perpetuate the cycle or break the cycle. And I'm here today to share with you how I broke the cycle and healed. The very first truth that I discovered to breaking not just child abuse, but any negative cycle that holds us back from living the life we know deep down we desire to live. The first vulnerable truth that I discovered was you have to face the pain. We have to go back to the darkest and most painful memories and moments of our life to go into every corner of every memory of every room in our mind and unlock those doors to expose it to the light. The very first time I did this, I turned around in my mind, scared, but summoned up the courage to turn around and face my abuser straight in the eyes and said, "Don't you touch me. Don't you put your hands on me." It was the very first time by speaking and facing the pain that I was able to put my abuser's behavior in context compared to healthy behavior. And I felt the pain and trauma that I had lived with for so long begin to release. Which led me to the second vulnerable truth that I discovered to breaking the negative cycles that hold us back and healing from the pain. The second truth that I discovered is we have to speak the pain. We have to put words to what was done to us and no longer stuff it down and try to be the tough guy and tough it out. We have to emote and put words to what was done to us. The very first time I went to a therapist, which I used to have a stigma around. Tough guys don't go to therapy. Those people go to therapy. But I had to become vulnerable, drop my walls, and go to a therapist because I was struggling inside. The suicidal desires never left me until I began to share what happened. And I remember the very first 5 minutes of therapy and the very first day, I share a story of my upbringing. And the therapist looks at me and said, "There was a lot of depression in your home." And I looked back at him and said, "You have no idea." By putting words to the pain and speaking the pain, it began the process to release the pain. I also went to an emotional intelligence seminar where I, for the very first time in my life, was surrounded by people who showed me unconditional love and didn't judge me. And I felt safe enough to unpack all that I had carried for so long. And I learned something incredible at this training, not from what they taught, but from what I experienced. That where love is present, truth will come forth, resulting in our personal freedom. I experienced no judgment, and I felt safe enough to share my story. You see, when I was growing up, I lived two lives, the life outside my home and the life inside my home. I became a master at wearing a mask. I would smile, I would put on the face, I would play the game, but inside I was depressed, confused, hurt, and I became a father and didn't know how to behave in a healthy way. Until I first faced the pain, then spoke the pain. Another step to speaking the pain is not only surrounding yourself with people who will show you unconditional love, but also distancing yourself from people who won't drop their judgments of you and simply just want to be around you and listen to your story. What I've learned is family is anyone who shows you unconditional love. And I'm here today to be the permission for all of us to know that you are worth your freedom. And your freedom starts first with facing the pain, then speaking the pain, so that you can eventually come to the third vulnerable truth: release the pain. It's time as a society that we stop these negative cycles, whatever they are. But we go through and face the darkest memories of trauma so that we can be free. Part of releasing the pain is learning to take the mask off and become vulnerable. The word vulnerable has become somewhat of a buzzword. But I reject the notion that being vulnerable is weak. I also reject the notion that being vulnerable is the exposure to pain. I am redefining what the word vulnerability means to mean having the courage to experience love in its purest form. To be willing to stand in the face of whatever shame, guilt, judgment is presented and know that I am standing in my own power to share my truth so that others feel safe enough to share theirs. You see, being vulnerable in today's society is being a hero. We are growing up in a society where heroes are supernatural. We need more natural heroes to willing to stand in the power of their own vulnerability and be an invitation for people to come forth and share their truth so that they can first face the pain, then speak the pain, and eventually release the pain. Whether we have to shout it out, scream it out, get the trauma out of our body, or we have to cry. I remember crying, sometimes uncontrollably, and telling the little boy that I once was that he did not deserve what happened to him, and that I loved him, and that he is safe now. And whatever trauma you have experienced in your life, I'm here to tell you that you did not deserve it, and that you are worth your freedom. It is time as a society that we heal, because I believe healed people have the greatest power to make social change. It's those of us who have gone through the worst of the worst who are fueled to uncover the best of the best in humanity and to put a stop to the pain. I had a friend that said, when I look up the family tree, it only brings me pain, but when I look down the family tree, it brings me joy because I can see how many generations I can bless. And that gives me immense joy. I don't want to see another statistic rise of hurting children who eventually become like me, an adult. I want to see a new statistic be created, a statistic of healed people. And when the statistic of healed people rises, society will begin to heal. We get to do what Mahatma Gandhi said and be the change we want to see. And it starts with facing the pain and speaking the pain so that we can release the pain. This is what it means to be a vulnerable hero in today's society. If you haven't been abused, I'm thankful you haven't. This applies to abused or non-abused. Anyone that carries trauma, anyone that has negative cycles that you are struggling with breaking in your life. I'm asking those who haven't been abused not to judge those who have or their behavior. Because behavior is just an output of an internal belief system. And when you are beat as a child, that belief system of your own self-worth and self-value gets incredibly skewed. And the behavior reflects that. I am asking you to show compassion, to show love, to simply be a safe place for people to share their story so that they may be free. And if you have been abused in any form, be it verbal, be it emotional, be it physical, be it psychological, be it sexual, or be it spiritual, I invite you to go through this process. Face the pain. Speak the pain so that you can release the pain. The time for healing in society, the time for your freedom, the time for our freedom is now. Not tomorrow, but now. Thank you.